Odds the Cincinnati Bengals are going to pick Ole Miss defensive tackle Walter Nolen in the first round are going up. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien, and we are Locked On Bengals here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've been covering the Cincinnati Bengals on Locked On Bengals since 2017. 16? 17?
16.
On the Locked On Bengals podcast. It's been so long, I can't even remember anymore. And we appreciate all of you out there that are everydayers. And if you're looking to become an everydayer on the Locked On Bengals podcast, just hit that subscribe button, ring the bell on YouTube, and you won't miss an episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Also appreciate everybody out there that makes Locked On Bengals their first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, where you can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And James, in today's episode, we have to get to the Bengals pre-draft visits, giving us some indications about who they're considering, where they're considering them, and a bunch of defensive tackles popping up in reports over the last couple of days that the Bengals are hosting for visits. In addition, we're going to revisit some of the Trey Hendrickson discussion from last week as we got a little bit of clarity around Trey's complaints about communication from the Bengals side of things. And there's flooding of the Ohio River. And that includes Paycor Stadium right now. We're going to finish the show with that topic. But James, Walter Nolan, to lead the show, is said to be visiting the Bengals for one of their 30 pre-draft official visits where they can bring in prospects. And that's in addition to them meeting with him at the Combine.
Yeah, the interest is very real. And the possibility of Walter Nolan being the 17th overall pick has never been higher because of what they've shown, what they've done, this process that they did with Amarius Mims. And you could look at it at a bunch of different angles, but both of these guys check a lot of the same boxes, whether it's age, 21 years old, obvious need. The Bengals need interior pass rush, and they know it as well as anyone. The strength of the draft. A lot of people coming into this draft said that one of the strengths that the Bengals could have is getting a really good defensive player with the 17th pick. We said the same thing early in the process last year about offensive line. And so when you look at it from that perspective, when you look at his production, when you look at everything that goes into it, and even if you want to go the PFF route, where he's a really good run defender, he's not a one-trick pony, which the Bengals, they do not want those type of players. You mentioned 2016. And in the 2015 draft, there were multiple guys that the Bengals were considering over Cedric Ogbuehi. They went with Cedric Ogbuehi because the Shane Rays of the world, the Bud Duprees, they weren't as big of a fan of those guys, even though they certainly could have used another pass rusher. They don't want one-trick ponies. And so Walter Nolan is someone that is certainly not only on their radar, but I think as we go now and as we record this 17 days away from the 2025 NFL draft, 17 days, the 17th overall pick, it certainly could be Walter Nolan, no doubt.
Yeah, today is the day that you officially have to call your shot because it's the number of days from the draft that it is until the Bengals pick number that they own in the first round. So that's your deadline. Put in the comments, call your shot. Who are the Bengals picking in the first round? I think the reason this is noteworthy, the reason that I framed this as the odds the Bengals will pick Walter Nolan going up is because these are the players that they're really doing their homework on, that they're really interested in. The players that they meet with multiple times in the process. They have had multiple contact points with Walter Nolan throughout this process. Those are the guys that they're really narrowing down. Last year, this was two of the players they drafted, Amarius Mims and Eric All. They had both into Cincinnati and they met with at the Combine, multiple contact points throughout the process. In addition to that, they're seeing them at all-star games and those sorts of things where applicable. And that is a very clear indicator of interest. If you needed something further, and for all those reasons you described, James, it could certainly make sense for Walter Nolan to be the Bengals pick in the first round. Now, maybe you're looking at various boards out there. If you're a fan and you're thinking he should be a trade back target, that's possible. Maybe this is due diligence for a scenario where their preferred path is not available to them. But what I like about this is, with some speculation that they like their young guys at defensive tackle, and they have a couple of veterans at defensive tackle now in TJ Slayton and BJ Hill, is that they're at least doing their homework on a guy that they would have to pick in the first round here that could elevate the ceiling of that room. That could be your foundational piece to build around in that room for his rookie contract and beyond if they get the extension done. And even if he just turns into a good starter, and that's what Walter Nolen is in the NFL, that would be a very valuable piece and something that the Bengals should be considering, because at 21 years old, as we discussed, in that sweet spot for the age that the Bengals like to draft in the first round, where there's still some physical growth potential, certainly some mental growth potential in those years, technique growth potential, because they just haven't been playing football as long, and you still have a little bit more moldability when you're 21 versus 23 in the first round. There is a potential for this to be that high-end ceiling pick, as well as a guy that checks enough boxes anyway to be at least a solid to good player in the NFL, even if he doesn't hit the potential superstar ceiling that everything might suggest he eventually could.
Yeah, high floor. I mean, I think that's part of it. We talk about ceiling a lot, and I'm as guilty of it as anyone, because you potential is fun and it's exciting. But if he can come in now and hopefully be a solid run defender now, and give you a little juice now, maybe you can get more out of him and get that ceiling. But at least you know that there's a floor there. And so I would not be mad at all if they take Walter Nolen. I think it would make a lot of sense. The fun part about this time of year is these things start to take shape. Mm-hmm. And I think what the Bengals have told us with their actions, and we kind of hit on this in our mock draft a bit, but what they've done versus what they haven't done. Well, they haven't added interior pass rush juice. We know they're aware of it because they signed Sheldon Rankins a year plus ago. They know, they value it, and I think they can get it in this draft. And so if you're going to get it in this draft, one of those guys naturally that you're going to look at is Walter Nolen. I'm sure they're talking about Derek Harmon. I can already hear comments and people reacting. They're looking at all of these guys. So if you have a favorite, believe me, they're looking at them. And I do think that there's another element here, whether it's Nolan and I saw some tweets at 6 schools in 7 years and including high schools and all that stuff. Well, that's why you bring a guy in for a visit and don't just meet with him at the combine too. You want to get to know him a little bit better. You want to take him to dinner. You want to see how he interacts with everybody, how he interacts in the building, if he is a fit. And these visits, they go a long way toward checking that box. So it doesn't mean they are going to pick him, but it means that they're interested, and that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, it's no guarantee. And the odds haven't literally gone up, I don't think. But from the outside perspective, this visit definitely indicates that level of interest is there. They're doing all of the homework they possibly could by getting this guy to come in and visit with him in person, in addition to all the Zooms I'm sure they're doing, all the pre-draft avenues for contact with prospects, all the discussions with coaches at various schools, 6 schools to talk to, you said, potentially, about Walter Nolen. They're doing their homework. And last point on Nolen, you mentioned high floor prospect, and I do want to just, not to rain on the parade entirely, because I know that's a thing that people accuse me of, but with defensive tackles, it's just, there can be a transition period to the NFL.
Sure.
I think that you saw that a little bit with Chris Jenkins last year. Is it a fit issue? Is it a how they're being used issue? Is it just a game speed, game strength significantly different from what you faced in college issue? Can be any number of things, but defensive tackles can take a little bit of time. They can take a year to cook. And so that's got to be something the Bengals are thinking about with their first round pick too, right? Because they're looking for that instant impact contributor. And that's the balance with any first round pick. Some of those first round defensive tackles, sometimes they can hit right away, but sometimes it can take a little bit of time. So just getting ahead of the floor conversation that if they do draft Walter Nolen, we'll be having on draft night.
But by the way, this will be a whole segment at some point. I still think Chris Jenkins is going to be a good player. I have not punted on that idea, and clearly the Bengals haven't either. But that doesn't mean they're not eyeing defensive tackles. Let's get into the other defensive tackles that they're eyeing or might be eyeing ahead of the draft, and we'll talk about Trey Hendrickson as well coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do everything you need to keep your pet healthy. I've used Chewy for years, and whether you're shopping for food, treats, pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food to treats to toys to beds to grooming. And so maybe you're looking for heartworm medication for your dog, or dog food or dog treats. Chewy is going to make the process so easy. And auto ship, well, it's a game changer because you can set up automatic deliveries for all of the above: food, treats, essentials, medicine, and boom, they're going to be able to send that to you. You don't have to think about it. It's just one less step that you have to do in your busy life. So make sure you check out Chewy because they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. I combine the two words because with Chewy, you're going to combine the convenience with everything you need for your pet. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details.
We have a number of players to catch up on here for pre-draft visits, and let's stick on the defensive tackles. There's also a safety that I missed a couple of days ago that I just noticed as well. We'll get to that one as
How
well.
about that tease?
Darius Alexander, one that you sent out to the Locked On Bengals insiders on Sunday. That
Sunday, one of them. Yeah,
I'm struggling with days in chronology today. Obviously, it's not names, not yet. Just give it time.
I was struggling with happy and healthy or whatever that was during the Chewy read. So struggle bus.
Sometimes Mondays. We're recording this on a Monday. Sometimes Mondays are Mondays. But Darius Alexander, Toledo defensive tackle, who I think the Bengals would have to take in the second round if they're interested. If that's the way the draft goes, a guy that the Bengals are bringing in for a visit. The other one, Ty Hamilton, on his own social media, Ohio State defensive tackle, indicating that he is in Cincinnati. The field, a tease for the flooding conversation that we're going to have to finish the episode, did not appear to be flooded. So a number of defensive tackles here that would all probably be in different parts of the draft. First round, second round, I think Darius Alexander realistically, maybe third round, but I think most likely second round. And Ty Hamilton would be most likely, I think, a day 3 idea at the position.
Yep. In that's what everyone wants them to draft a defensive tackle, right? And so scouting throughout and making sure, because you want to put yourself in a position where if it's not round 1, and it very well might not be round 1. They haven't done that since 1994. I mean, it's been a long time since they've gone defensive tackle in the first round. And maybe it's not day 2 in back-to-back years like it was last year with 2 out of their 3 day 2 picks. And so if it gets to day 3, Ty Hamilton, someone to keep on our radar. That's what this says. So maybe nothing. Could be something. Could be a future Bengal. A lot of Buckeyes fans would certainly love to see that happen, I'm sure. You're eyeing a different Ohio State Buckeyes defensive tackle in Tyleik Williams. That would be the one that you would want, Jake. And look, I would too. I think that's what's intriguing about the draft is you mentioned like round 2 for Alexander. Well, what if he goes before they pick at 49? And some of these guys fall that we're expecting to go early and they fall a little bit. There's always going to be a guy or two in the second round that you're like, how in the world is he there? Sometimes the Bengals don't feel like it's worth it. Sometimes they do, but you better believe it. In 18 days from now, there'll be multiple guys we're talking about. Like, man, they didn't get picked in the first round. What if they fall? What if they get to 49? Should the Bengals, it's hard to say move up with 6 picks, but should the Bengals move up for whoever? Like, who knows? It's part of the fun.
It's part of why we were entertaining the James Pierce conversation not too long ago in the second round, after he was mocked to the Bengals in the second round by ESPN's Matt Miller.
Walter Nolen, I've seen in multiple second round mocks, by the way.
Yep. He could be in that fringe. I think that there are split opinions on Walter Nolen. I've talked somewhere about some of my concerns with Walter Nolen. He's not like a 100% slam dunk clean prospect or he'd be picked in the top 10.
Sure.
There's a reason that
that's a big part of it.
And maybe that's why the Bengals are bringing him in. Could be. They want to get some extra eyes on him in person for those reasons.
Walter, run the 40-yard dash through the water.
Yep. Through the water, in the parking lot. Some extra resistance. Don't
Beat
worry.
this canoe.
Don't worry. We've done the math. We know how much the water resistance is going to slow you down.
Jump above the water. Can you do it?
Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Like the pool jump thing where they have to like jump out of this. Yeah. Really test the lower body explosion. They're getting creative down at Paycor.
Oh my God.
Some other visits. I feel bad about it because it's got to be a nightmare for them to deal with, to be honest. We'll get there though. Some other visits to mention here for the Bengals, and these are potential locals because they're Ohio State guys. I don't know if these Ohio State visits actually count against their allotted 30 pre-draft visits, but Quinton Judkins visited or is visiting the Bengals for one of those in-person visits, and Jack Sawyer. I think we talked about the Sawyer one. That's a while ago now that was reported. But Quinton Judkins, another Ohio State player. But the safety go ahead.
This is a test for you before you get to the safety.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to pick one of these two guys at 49, who you picking, Sawyer or Judkins? I don't think you love either one.
I don't know. I do not have a good answer on the spot. It's
my answer would be
close,
my answer would be Judkins. But yes, I think it is close.
I think
for a lot of people.
I think it's closer than you would think because, like, I think you would default to Sawyer.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would.
But I do think that it might be a little bit closer than you think. But, like, Judkins also isn't a home run second-round running back prospect to me, which is where I hesitate. Like, great athleticism, right? Mm-hmm. But there's some other things that, for me, cloud the profile for a second-round running back. Those are interesting visits, so I don't mean to gloss over them. I just wanted to get to the safety as well because I hadn't seen it, and I think it's interesting.
And Henderson might be the best fit of all three, by the way.
Travion.
Anyway, Travion Henderson. Yeah. Love him. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and again, issues with that profile as well, but there are a lot of very interesting running backs. It's very much like a pick your flavor of running back class if you want a running back. But we'll get into the running back hole, I think,
People
little bit
deeper. People are so mad that I brought it up.
Another day. JJ Roberts, the Marshall safety. So the Bengals were at the Marshall Pro Day where they saw JJ Roberts and
met with him,
Mike Green as the potential standouts from Marshall this year. And reportedly on April 1st, JJ Roberts also visiting the Cincinnati Bengals and going to do that in person. That was reported by the Sports Dude Hines show. All right, taking that with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I do think
to our wonderful podcast.
I do think
it might be legitimate.
It's legitimate. I do think this is legitimate.
I'm just messing with you. It's probably someone local to Marshall. Yeah.
What do you think of that visit, James? Safety interest, potential day 3 safety.
Well, because it's very similar to the defensive tackle. Like there's a real scenario where they come out of the first 2 days without a safety, even though I think they want to get one in the first 2 days. And so you got to do your due diligence. He's a really good athlete. I remember when I did a little bit of homework on him when they met with him at the pro day. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I mean, he might be there in round 6. Like that might be your guy in round 6 that you go with. So, I think they're doing their due diligence. I would be surprised if they didn't leave this draft with a safety. I think they want to address it. I'd be pretty surprised if they didn't address it with an earlier pick. But if it gets to that point, drafting a higher end athlete that could probably contribute right away on special teams if you need him to, I think that makes sense.
I do think this is a fully legitimate report, by the way.
I think it is too. I think it's a local thing. Anyways, it was just a funny name to say, like according to
Yeah, as I
Sports
was
Dude 891.
Yeah, well, not quite that. This is a person with a football show that has a bit of a following, seems to be connected with JJ Roberts specifically,
Got it.
and so I think we can take that one
You
as
didn't get
a
doved
day 3 safety
or
that we
ML
believe
footballed.
the Bengals have met with. No, I did not. Let's wrap up with Trey Hendrickson. Circle back to that conversation and hit on this flooding issue down at Paycor Stadium to wrap up this Locked On Bengals coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on all the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. That's $250. That's $250 you can use on NFL draft bets. Yes, they have Bengals future odds and odds to be the 17th pick at FanDuel.com. And FanDuel is going to make life easy. You can live bet. So whether it's the NBA, whether it's, and maybe you're watching this before the national championship game, maybe you think that Florida is going to handle business or that Houston's going to continue their magical run after upsetting Duke the other night. Regardless, get in on all of the fun with FanDuel and take advantage of their opportunity now to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. All you have to do is place that first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Again, don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus today.
Ari Myrov James has been pretty well connected to Trey Hendrickson's camp throughout this process. And after that interview where Hendrickson went on Pat McAfee, talked about all the things that are bothering him in this process and clarified some of the things that he wants. One of the interesting notes that came up was that Trey said the Bengals weren't communicating directly with him or his agent. And people were very confused by what that meant because it doesn't really make sense. How do you communicate if not directly? And the Myrov clarification seems to be that it is not Katie Blackburn or even Duke Tobin communicating with Trey or his agent. It's somebody a little bit at a lower level in the Bengals organization, which takes me back to the hire a GM segment and rant from a while ago. But if it's somebody, it's clearly an executive that is authorized to speak with the agent on this matter, right? Like it's somebody high enough in the Bengals organization that they have the organizational power, quote unquote, to have that conversation at some level. But the frustration could stem from the fact that it is not one of the top levels communicating with Trey and his agent.
Yeah, which if this is true, and we have no reason to believe it's not, this gives you an idea of where the urgency is. And we've been on this part of it. Like, it just doesn't feel like anything's imminent. The trade deadline for Trey is 17 days from now, the NFL draft. I would be shocked even if you could say 18, I guess, if you wanted to go into day 2. I don't think the Bengals view it that way. And so after that, it's a waiting game. And I don't think the Bengals are in a rush right now. I think they are going to be focused on, all right, what do we add in the draft? And then after we add in the draft, let's reassess our roster. Like guard. Like they may sign a veteran guard. They may do what we've asked them to do, but they're going to wait until after the draft to do it. And because they want to see where their roster is. And maybe Trey gets done before the draft. Just doesn't feel like it. And this is part of it now. When you have the reputation and communication issues that the Bengals have had, this is annoying, alarming, frustrating. Not that anyone that is in that Bengals front office isn't qualified to communicate with Trey's agent. I don't mean that one bit. But those people aren't getting the deal done. Those people can't sign off. Even if it's Duke. Duke can't sign off on the deal. He's not negotiating the deal with Trey, how it's structured, how they get him paid. And so when the issue is contract, well, then it's probably best that the person in charge of getting the deal done is the one communicating. And if it were flipped and Katie was trying to get a deal done with Trey and Trey's agent was like, and I think it's Harold Lewis. Harold, if I'm wrong. Yeah. Trey's agent, Harold Lewis, if he's like, oh, well, talk to my secretary. And again, I'm not comparing the Bengals front office people to a secretary, but someone else, wait, that's not who's going to negotiate the deal anyway. So what's the point? So if this is true, it's annoying, but it also is an indicator that nothing is imminent and that the Bengals are clearly okay with waiting to get something done, which was really how I felt with Trey, even going back to January. I thought he would be last in this pecking order because the Bengals have a different type of leverage, I think, in this negotiation than they did with Jamar and T.
And it something could have, maybe not a deal, but something could have happened sooner because they granted that trade request, the permission to seek trades. If a trade had come together, that would have happened sooner, but it didn't come together. And now we're in a position where the Bengals can see where things fall and take their time and do things like they normally do them in the summer and get these things done. But the one analogy that you could draw is a lot of people have probably experienced if you work in a big organization, they're different, and you need to buy something professionally. Your organization needs to buy something. You need to buy a printer or something at work. You have different levels of signing authority often in large organizations where a manager maybe can buy something worth up to $200. And if it's more than $200, they need to go to the next level up. Then if it's more than $500, you need to go to the next level up. If it's more than $1,000, you need to go to an executive vice president. So there's these levels of purchasing power that are granted to various levels of an organization. Could be something like that with the Bengals, right? Where certain players, certain executives are authorized to sign deals up to X million dollars. But at some point, it goes to Katie Blackburn. And I would think, maybe not. Maybe Duke does have the authority to do deals this big. We don't really know. But I would think for this one, that would be a Katie Blackburn contract for the amount of dollars that will be involved with Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I don't think that that Duke is doing this deal. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd be stunned if that were the case. But yeah, I also think that I've been in that position directly with Locked On. I had to ask Jake Liscow permission to buy my microphone. It was ridiculous. He had to sign off on it. It had to go up the pecking order, and just ridiculous. And then my camera, which costs more than the mic, don't even want to know what I had to do to get that authorized. Just ridiculous stuff.
Luckily, you didn't have to deal with the flood that the Bengals are currently dealing with in the players' parking lot. The indoor practice facility looked to be inundated. Hopefully, they don't have to replace the field on that indoor facility. That's where my mind went immediately because it was totally surrounded, like pretty high with Ohio River water. And hopefully, the flood walls reportedly built in to Paycor Stadium have protected the newly renovated locker room and various bits of the stadium and the infrastructure that are just inside that player parking lot. Looked like the field was okay. We saw that from Ty Hamilton with that visit that we talked about earlier, but can't imagine that nightmare. And we'll probably find out a little bit more about what flood protection measures Paycor Stadium has in place once this thing is cleaned up, I imagine.
Yeah, this is the first time in Paycor Stadium history. So when Paul Brown Stadium was built in 2000, the last flood like this happened in 97. And so it wasn't an issue for Paycor, obviously. And now they're dealing with it. I don't think it's gotten to the locker room, but the locker room isn't super far. Like it's not 3,000 feet away from that player lot. I mean, it's convenient because the players park there and then they walk to the locker room. So it's not too far. I haven't heard anything as far as anything like that being impacted, but man, it's just wild like that. Like, so the gate that you're seeing and that player lot, like that's where everyone's going through on whether it's video of Joe walking in on game day, whether it's media at camp, whether it's all the players when they're walking out the camp, like they're going right through that area. And so to see it like that is just wild stuff. Hopefully there's not a lot of damage. Hopefully the flood walls hold up, but there's just a lot of nooks and crannies in a stadium. Like water gets through, man. Water does not lose. It very rarely loses. So to hold that off, I just hope they hold it off enough to alleviate any damages, because that's the last thing that you need is damage to the stadium with all the stadium negotiations and everything. You don't need that headache with the offseason program set to start in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's pretty close.
And the media room, not that people are too
People
worried
don't
about
give
that.
a damn
No,
about that.
not the workroom. The place where they're renovating right now, because people
Yeah.
want to hear the questions reporters ask. That's not too far away from that door either. So hopefully all of the electronics down there, all the the cafeteria, all those things that are in that area
Well, if
are
you look at the
safe.
NFLPA survey, the players might be rooting for the cafeteria to be taken out.
All
All right,
right.
that's it. I'm
All
just
right.
joking.
All
I'm
right.
joking. It's a
That's going to
low-hanging
do it
fruit.
for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hooday, and have a good one.
Jake, I need a new mic.
I can't